Hello, I have a reed here that's pretty typical of a lot of reeds that I make, and then I pull them out the next morning and they're a little different than what I remembered. And this one is kind of one of those. So so it sounds kind of like that. So if I put it on the oboe, it doesn't sound terrible. So I know the tone is not necessarily the issue exactly. It's not perfect, but the issue is it feels like a mouthful of reed. It's very hard to control and really resistant. So I find it to be what I would consider a little flat, pretty resistant, and rattly. In other words, when I put my lips down to the thread and just blow and let go, it's got more than it's a little flat, but it's got more notes than just one. It should be an octave, preferably a C. Um, but right now it's a little lower than that, but it's got all the notes in there. So the first thing that I always try to remember is look at the opening, because if you don't look at the opening right now, you might mess up. So if you can see the opening, that's big. In my book, that's pretty big. So I'm gonna dip it in some water, and then I'm gonna just with my fingers, starting at the tip, I'm just gonna kind of close it and let it pop back open, and then close it again. Just kind of give it a little mini massage to try to close that opening and try to get the fibers of the cane softened up a little bit before I scrape, because if I did it in the reverse order, I'm just going to take too much cane off and I'm going to weaken the reed. So let's see what that did. So you can see the opening, hopefully you can see the opening is a little smaller. So it's still a little flat, but you can see the rattliness almost went away. Still a little bit there. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and clip it, because really not much I do to the reed is gonna make the pitch go up in the crow except for clipping it. And I always use a razor blade when I clip. And I'm holding the angle so the tube is a little higher. I don't know if you can see that exactly. So that I can clip a little bit at an angle. I find that new reeds sound more focused if I clip one blade a little shorter than the other one. And that shorter blade's gonna go on my bottom lip. That's where if I put a number or something on the reed, I always put it on the short side. And a lot of people tie the knot, clip it so that the knot is on the short side. I don't do that. The reason I don't do that is because when I'm first making the reed, and then I'll flip it around, and it generally, I can get an idea of what the tone is going to be like, even with that initial crow. So I make the short blade, based on which side it sounded the best, even right off the bat. So I clipped it, but it didn't go up much. Which makes me think I only clipped off the longer blade. If you don't clip off that shorter blade, the pitch of the crow is not going to go up. So let me make sure I get both blades this time. One more try. It's better to clip too little than to clip too much. There we go. So yeah, that's a little higher, and it should hopefully sound better. Let's see. It actually sounds pretty good. It's just a little bit resistant now. So this gives me a chance to tell you where I scrape for resistance. So if the reed is resistant, I find that to be the corners of the tip. Usually it's a problem that one corner or maybe two corners is thicker than the other. So when it's thicker, it looks wider. So I don't know if you can see on this blade, by my eye, the left corner is a little wider, which means it's a little thicker. And if I flip over, it's the reverse. So that right blade is a little bit wider. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hopefully get my sharp knife, and I'm gonna go a little bit on that left corner, and I'm gonna try to scrape with the grains of the cane when I'm getting this thin. Even though my knife is angled a little bit, I'm still trying to go up because I find that I rip off less corners if I scrape with the grain. On this blade, it was that right corner. So I always want to have a game plan when I'm scraping before I scrape. I used to just randomly scrape and hope for the best. But now I try to be more methodical and plan where I want to scrape, and then it really comes down to how sharp the knife is after that, because if you have a game plan that makes sense and you get your knife sharp enough to execute your game plan, it takes a lot of the guesswork out. Yeah, I can feel that that's a lot less resistant in my mouth, what the effort I'm having to exert. So let's see if this sounds better, feels better. So, two things happened. It got easier, but the tone went a little sideways. I call that spread. So that's what I thought. So the crow dropped a little bit, so I'm not on a C anymore. So it got easier and more comfortable, but the tone went sideways, and I felt like I was having to lift up on the high notes a little bit. So what I'm doing right now when I'm doing that and talking and about something else is I'm closing that opening. I don't want the reed to be more open because that's going to make me scrape in the wrong place. But it's still flat, so that tells me I need to clip that tip one more time. That feels pretty good. So let's see if there's a method to my madness here. So that sounds okay. Sounds pretty good. So I'm gonna leave it alone. So anyway, I hope that made sense. Have fun making reeds. It should always be fun. Don't forget.